Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of It's No Secret Dr. T. With me today is a friend and lawyer. Yes, those two things can go together. It is Steve Richardson, and he's giggling at me through this video at the moment. Now, Steve is based in southern New Jersey, and he's been representing and giving knowledgeable counsel to individuals and businesses for well over 20 years. He helps them with collections, bankruptcy, even traffic violations, student loans, wills, a lot of those areas that I know nothing about. But today, Steve and I are going to talk a little bit about dealing with debt in general, personal finance, how people get themselves in strife. So, Steve, how are you doing today?
Oh, very well, Tyson. How have you been?
I'm good. I liked how you laughed when I said friend and lawyer, they can go together.
Oh, it's like the old lawyer joke. You know, the mother and the child are walking through a cemetery and they see this gravestone that says, here lies a lawyer and an honest man. And the child asks his mother, says, Mommy, how come there are two people buried in this grave?
I remember reading a joke somewhere and it said, what's the difference between a lawyer and a catfish?
One's a scum-supping bottom feeder and the other one's a fish.
Yeah, that's it. See, it's always good if the lawyer knows the answer to the joke, then you're not offending anybody.
Well, that's right. Every Monday on my Facebook page, I tell a lawyer joke. It's always Lawyer Joke Monday. It's a way to get into the week and get over the shock of being back to work. So
well, it is one of those things, though, isn't it? When you think of lawyers, some people think, oh, they're like ambulance chasers, and you know what? And it's probably like every profession. There's always those people that can drag everybody else down, but majority of people that are in the law profession are there for a particular reason because they wanted to help people.
I was sort of, everybody gets into the law for different reasons and oftentimes, and it's generational to an extent. You know, I grew up on Perry Mason, so that's what got me interested in the law. Another generation, it was L.A. Law. Another one was Ally McBeal. It's all these, television got me into the law and seeing these people seeming to have a lot of fun. And
like Suits.
I wanted to be, Suits. But Suits it showed more of the, I don't know, it was grittier. I don't know, to me.
I really enjoyed Suits, but I suppose it's the same thing where all the CSI programs came through, and they made being a lab technician look really, really sexy. And then all of a sudden, there's all these people that want to do that as a career, but they don't realize that when they're working in the lab, they don't have music going and lights flashing. They're actually moving test tubes around. So I think TV and culture has a big influence on careers, definitely.
Yes, and it isn't always like it is on television for whether it's the law or being a criminalist or anything else. But and that's what did get me into the law and want me to be a lawyer is these lawyer shows that I would watch growing up. And I originally wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer and studied that in law school and graduated and ended up working for a collection firm, collecting debt from other people. Something is about as far as I thought I'd ever be from what I wanted to be growing up and in law school. Just life takes you down a different path sometimes.
So did you enjoy that area? Once you got into it, you went, this is actually quite interesting? Or, why did you stay in that area once you got into it?
I didn't stay in it because of the nature of collection practice, at least back then, it wasn't a lot of lawyering.
And you're in New Jersey area, so I thought collections people just went around with baseball bats. Isn't that the usual? The collection department turns up with a baseball bat.
Well, that's North Jersey.
That's right. You're in Southern Jersey. We're talking about the other people.
Jersey. Yes, life is not The Sopranos or Jersey Shore or anything else where you see on television with New Jersey. But the practice of law, I still found it interesting, and the job with a collection firm had me in court almost immediately. I think within days of getting the bar results back that I had passed the bar exam, I was appearing for a trial call on a collection case. So I got a lot of experience. I got a lot of court time. I just found it just be very paper intensive and not a lot of actual lawyering. And I ultimately got out of it.
Okay. So what prompted you to start working for yourself?
I found that I to a great extent, I'm a bit of a control freak. I like to do things my way. And being a solo attorney allowed me to do that. I could practice law the way I wanted to. I could take the cases that I wanted and not take the cases I didn't want. And since being out on my own, I found that the most stress I had in my job uh, it was before I left in handling the cases that were handed to me to work, and not the ones that I had taken on within my practice area. I had built up a bankruptcy and workers' comp practice and a couple things where I was enjoying doing that. But I ended up being assigned these other cases to work that I just didn't find as enjoyable. And being on my own and being my own boss allowed me to choose the kind of work that I did, the work that would make me happy. And I ended up being a happier lawyer as a result.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I've heard other people mention that. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about law or podiatry. When you work for somebody else, you can say what areas of your profession that you really enjoy doing, and you can try and target that, and you can tell your employer that this I want to see more of this and less of this, but you still don't really have a say that if there's some areas that you don't really enjoy doing, the boss can still just say you have to do it. But when you work for yourself, you then have a choice. But I've seen a lot of people who then work for themselves who then end up doing everything, even the stuff they don't like.
Yeah, they're worried that if they don't take this case, there won't be any other cases that come along. There's that fear that you have to take everything that comes in the door. And you're right, that can lead to stress and problems. You take on cases that you later regret taking on, clients that you took on that you regret later taking on. And I've learned that I'll it's just not worth taking on that case if you're not going to be happy. It's not worth the stress and the sleepless nights.
So it's about like what you've done in your practice is niching down. You niched into a particular area that you enjoyed and took on the cases. And then even within that niche, there's probably still parts of it you don't like. So you then only took on what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I did. I mean, and I've shed certain areas of my practice. For example, as I said, in my previous firm before I went out on my own, I had a workers' comp practice. And I haven't done workers' comp in years. And I've gotten into my collection defense work really came out of my bankruptcy practice. This one woman came to me and said, she really didn't want to file bankruptcy. She had a problem with this one creditor who was really coming after her, causing her problems. And she just wanted to deal with that creditor. And every attorney she talked to would be a bankruptcy attorney who would tell her to file bankruptcy. So she came to me because I was willing to talk to her about other solutions. Now she ended up filing bankruptcy because that ultimately was the best thing for her.
Yeah.
But because I was willing to talk about other alternatives, and I realized this this underserved community of people that they don't have a lot of debt, but they have this one debt. I found lately in the past few years, often a student loan, usually a private student loan, because there are these large balances, and they don't think they're ever going to be able to get out from under it. And I find it enjoyable just haggling a deal for them, trying to work something out with the creditor that's affordable, either as a lump sum payment to be done with it, or just a payment that they can afford that fits within their budget. And that reduces a huge amount of stress for them because they're no longer fearing a wage garnishment or their bank account being frozen at some point and their checks bouncing. So I was able to help people, and without them filing bankruptcy, just solve the problem for them without that nuclear option.
Okay, yeah, because I have known a few people that have declared bankruptcy, and they had so many other options available to them that they didn't actually have to do it, but they were given really bad advice from a family member who had no idea what they were talking about, and for some reason, they just took their advice and wouldn't listen to anybody else. So I think anyone listening to this, if you're in financial stress, talk to a professional. Don't talk to your uncle who's never owned a business, who has no qualifications, and then telling you, oh no, you should declare bankruptcy because my best friend Bob, down at the local bar, he declared bankruptcy and everything worked out fine for him. So it's talk to a professional.
Yes, you should really look at all your options. Don't fear bankruptcy. Bankruptcy, in a lot of cases, is really the best thing you can do. And some people I find, uh, again, without talking to a professional, sort of trying to do it themselves, ended up making their situation worse. They drain their pensions. They'll get a second mortgage they can't afford, all in a way of trying to consolidate their debt, and then they just get into debt again, and they have an even bigger problem.
Why do you think
So,
people are so scared of the word bankruptcy? Does it look like it's a medal of failure? You know, they get this big stamp on the forehead that they think they're going to walk down the street and people are going to say, "Oh, there goes another bankrupt, another bankrupt guy or girl, lady, man."
yes, I think to an extent it's a fear of failure. Yes, I think it's people I've talked to, uh, and unfortunately, in my business, I actually have repeat business. I've had people come back, and I remember one couple absolutely in tears, and I said, that they had to do this again. They did it the last time. They were so proud of themselves. They've gotten themselves out of financial difficulty. They're back on the road to financial freedom. And now they're here talking to me about bankruptcy. And I said, well, let me ask you this. If you, wife, hadn't lost your job, if your son who lived down in Florida hadn't gotten sick and you had to go down and take care of him, would you be sitting here today? And they said, no. I said, so how is this your fault? How is
Yeah.
any of this your fault? Things happen that are beyond your control. Give yourself permission to give up, and say, there's really nothing I can do, and realize it isn't you. And the vast majority of people that I've represented, it isn't them. It's an illness. A lot of medical debt. They didn't have insurance or good enough insurance, and it swamped them. Or they lost their job and ended up living on credit cards for a while because they there's the only way to pay the bills until they can get another job.
Yeah.
And then they ran up a lot of debt. So I just think people are afraid of that stigma, that feeling of failure, when really, in the vast majority of cases, it isn't their fault, and they just need to give themselves permission to move forward and file bankruptcy.
And I think sometimes we see the media where there'll be these very wealthy people that have set up these big companies who are living in mansions, driving flash cars, owning airplanes, and next thing they're declaring bankruptcy, but then they're still living the high life because it wasn't, all the rest of that stuff wasn't in their name. And therefore
Right.
it sort of gives that whole bankruptcy thing like it's sort of almost like a con type thing that it isn't real.
Yeah, they're using other people's money, things like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, they're living that high life, but it's because they're sort of living beyond their means, or they're what I call income millionaires, where they're millionaires because they have such high income levels that they're able to sustain this life. But what happens if they lose that job, and they're no longer able to sustain that lifestyle, and it can become a real problem. The real people that you should be looking up to and admiring are the millionaires that you never know are millionaires. You'd never know it. There's a famous book called The Millionaire Next Door,
Yeah.
which posits that most millionaires, they live a very frugal lifestyle. They live under their means. They invest over time, and they are asset millionaires and have real security in that they could lose their paycheck tomorrow and they can keep on going because they have investments and other things going on that can provide them with the income that they need.
I think it's true about living. Yeah, don't live beyond your means. It's
Right.
having, and it's not so much that you need to have a strict budget that we're only going to spend this amount in these areas and no more. But I think it's really, back to that old saying, you get paid, invest a certain amount of it first, and then live off the rest. Don't just keep putting everything on credit cards and then hope that the money is always going to be there.
Right. Pay yourself first.
Yeah,
And then,
I remember, I was going back a few years now, and I remember I was saying to my wife one day, who, you know my wife, Christine, and I don't think I'd be in the financial position I'm in now if it wasn't for Christine saying no to me sometimes. I want to do this. No. Oh, okay. And, but it was like, it was going back a while when, a lot of people had flat screen TVs. And we didn't. We still had the old box top, big bugger. And I kept saying, I want to get a flat screen TV. I want to get a flat screen TV. And Chris said, we don't really need it. The other TV's working fine. I went, oh, okay. And then one particular day I said, do you know we're the only people that I know in our circle of friends that do not have a flat screen TV? And Christine looked at me and said, do you know we're the only people in our circle of friends who also own their own house? And I went,
yes.
Touche. Good point. And
absolutely.
That really drove the message home to me that, yeah, you were right. We worked hard, we worked long hours. What we made, we put back into the business, and we paid off it, and we paid our debt down. We didn't take holidays. We were constantly paying things off. So, yeah, smart woman. I'm going to get her on the podcast, actually.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm getting her on. I've just got to tee her up. She's going to be on in the next couple of weeks, I think. And, we're going to talk about a few things that don't know if I'll ever publish it. Did this lead on to you starting the podcast, the Financial Freedom Podcast? Is this what sparked that side of things?
Yes. I found that just in my marketing and in providing information to the public, that people consume information in different ways. Some people read. Some people are visual and they watch videos. I have people that come to me and call me. They say, yeah, I was reading on your website. Or somebody else will say, yeah, I saw one of your videos. Well, podcasting has actually been around for well over 10 years and is becoming more and more popular as people, I only listen to podcasts on my way to and from work or driving around. That's what I listen to in my car.
Yeah.
And people can like to learn, whether it's listening to audiobooks or podcasts, but they learn by listening. And that was just another way of providing information to people and talking to other folks, and initially in my community, my accountant, my insurance agent, my realtor, all these people in the community could talk about different things. I had them on the show just to provide information as a public service. And I bill it sort of as a podcast that is produced by a really bad businessman, because if you have financial freedom, you don't need a bankruptcy attorney. You don't need someone to work out your credit card debt and negotiate with creditors. Your student loans are under control and everything else. So that's sort of from the non-lawyer, and I guess maybe I am a bad businessman.
So, but you've set your business up, though, in a way that if you help people the right way, they never need to come back and see you a second time. So it's not one of those things where you're going to constantly get repeat business. And even that couple that came back who'd been bankrupt once before, it's not as though when they walk through your front door, you go, Jesus, good to see you again.
Yeah. And in fact, one of the things I say to people, and I've said it at least twice over the past 10 days or so, I'll wrap up a case, whether we're walking out of traffic court or finishing up a bankruptcy. I say, well, thanks a lot. I hope I never see you again.
Yeah.
And they always get a big laugh. And it's a way of saying, I hope your life gets better at this point and you never need me.
Yeah.
I hope I never see you again. And if I don't see them again, that means not necessarily that I did a good job, but that I helped them. And then they did a good job after leaving my office in staying in better shape. And maybe I'm helping those clients through my podcast as they go through life after I've represented them.
So do you maintain contact with them afterwards? Do you stay in touch in some way other than the podcast? You do any other marketing towards them just to stay in touch so they know that you're there so they can refer other people?
Absolutely. I have an e-newsletter that comes out twice a month on the first and third Friday of the month, and provides all sorts of just interesting information on a little life hacks or interesting points or information. It also talks about the most recent episode of the podcast. I tell a lawyer joke at the end, but hopefully useful information that makes it a fun read, and the reader gets something out of it. So my clients, people I've represented, whether it's been recently or years ago, they stay on my list and they hear from me until they get tired of me and hit unsubscribe. I don't know, but I do continue to reach out to people, and I have had people respond and say to me, oh, I love love reading your newsletter.
That's good though. So if I'll just what is the name of your law office so they can find you?
Well, it's not the legal name, but at Richardson Law Offices. I'm a solo attorney in the city of Woodbury, which is the county seat for Gloucester County here in South Jersey.
Okay, so if people ring your office, they actually deal with you direct.
Yes, I do have a service that allows, instead of getting voicemail if I'm not available, at least during working hours, you can talk to a human being, and they can take a message or put you through to me or whatever. But there's always someone. Yeah, for the most part, you call, you get me.
So getting back to, like, say, the personal finance sort of area, what advice would you give people if someone was listening to this and they go, we're not in that position that we that we need to file for bankruptcy. We're not scared of it, but we are under financial stress. Are there certain points or tips that you give people straight away of things to look at where they could possibly cut back or tighten their belt, or maybe just improve things a little bit more?
Yeah, a lot of times I've looked at people's budgets and things they spend money on and things like that, and then sometimes there are ways that they can cut back on their spending. I have all sorts of articles on my website that talk about that. There's also a book download that I have associated with my a podcast called The First 3 Steps to Financial Freedom that talk about that. Ways to increase income or cut expenses so that you create positive cash flow, which then gives you the money you may need to start paying down your debts.
Yeah.
So I say to people, look, bankruptcy, my office is the last stop on the train. Okay. You try everything else first within reason. So if you have a lot of credit card debt, talk to the different credit card banks and say, look, I want to pay off the cards. I'm going to stop using the cards. I want to pay off the balance in 3 years. How much would I have to pay per month at the interest rate for that card over 36 months to pay it off in full? Then get that number from each of the credit card banks, add it together, and if that's an affordable payment, then great. You've paid off your debt. Now I'm not a credit counselor, but I know from the research I've done into how credit works, if you may have gotten behind on your credit card debt and everything, but if you pay off the whole thing with interest over 36 months, you're going to have a good payment history, and you're paying off your debt, which is going to result in your credit score going up. So you not only avoid bankruptcy, you pay off your debt, but you're able to, in the process of doing that, increase your credit score. And then once your debt's paid off, you can start funding an emergency fund, saving for retirement, do other things with that money.
No, I think it's good advice. And I want to point out to people, like, if you're listening to this and you're in Australia or you're in the United Kingdom, you think, oh, no, this doesn't apply to me. This guy's in New Jersey, USA. It all applies. It's the same advice, even though the laws in each country may be slightly different. The thinking behind finance, money, saving, personal debt is all the same. Like you said, living within your means. Looking at where you're spending your money, and are there areas where you can cut back? Or are there areas like within your work that you can actually make more money? Is there an opportunity to put your hand up and say, hey, I want to work overtime, I want to work more hours, can I work on weekends? So it's a bit of give and take on both ends. Cut back, make more.
Right. To the point where, you don't want to kill yourself where you're working 2 jobs or working a lot of overtime or things like that. But if that's what you need to pay down your debt, then it may be a short-term solution. You pay down the debt. You may not need that second job anymore. And then you can quit that job and have more time with your family, but have a better financial future.
So I definitely think anyone who's listening to this, go to Steve's website, which I assume is richardsonlawoffices.com.
That's correct.
And go on. Is that download on your website, or well, you can get a link to the podcast on your website, and then from there they can get that download.
Or you can just go to podcast.richardsonlawoffices.com.
Okay.
And the main site has a button on the menu bar at the top for podcast. And then through those episodes, you'll see on the right a a little add and download form for you to download the book.
Okay, that's good. So, and yours is it a Foster web marketing website?
Yes,
It
yes,
is.
it is.
Yeah, I thought I recognised it when I was on there the other day.
I've been with them since 2010.
Yeah, well, when I had the podiatry clinic, my website was with Foster Web Marketing as well. And Tom Foster has been on this show. I think he was episode, off the top of my head, but I can even have a very quick look on my computer, which is directly in front of me. Tom Foster
He was actually 2 episodes.
He was 2 episodes, and it was episode 180 and 181, and it was Website Marketing Growth Plan, Part 1 and Part 2. And the only reason we broke it into 2 parts, because if anyone knows Tom likes to talk. So I pressed record 2.5 hours later. I went, geez, I feel like Joe Rogan doing a 3-hour show. And so we split into 2. So, but really good information. They do great websites. And yeah, that's how I could pick that they did yours.
Yeah.
So I just want to take another little deviation, and I know this probably applies to America more than probably other countries. I'm not sure about other countries, but in Australia I know student debt and student loans is starting not so much to become a problem here in Australia, but when I went through university, it was all free. I didn't pay anything. I did my whole podiatry degree and paid zero. So when I came out, I had zero debt. But now I know when they start podiatry or any university course, there's an accumulation of debt over a period of time. And you get a discount if you pay up front. But I know in America, it's one of the things that you hear on TV shows that student loans seem to cripple some people. Why is that?
Well, it can be for different reasons. I mean, certainly student loan debt is becoming the next big bubble in the American economy. You had credit card debt, then you had the mortgage bubble that kind of burst and caused problems with real estate values and everything. But now we've got this creeping debt in student loans, which is over $1 trillion now nationally. And most of it is federal student loans. I think about last I saw the statistic was about 15% or so of outstanding student loan debt was through private banks. But I think that part of it is that there's to some extent been an overemphasis on a college degree. Oh, you have to have a college degree to be successful. This, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
And that if you get into this great college, this Ivy League school or very expensive school, that's where you should go, whether you can afford it or not. And I tell people you should go to the best school you can that you can afford, and you need to look at that. And it can be a hard decision. Personal finance writer Erin Lowry, who wrote who bills herself as broke millennial and has written 2 books and is working on a 3rd. When she was going to college, her parents sat her down and said, "Look, you can go to the school you want and you can graduate with student debt, or you can go to this school, which has all sorts of financing and incentives and grants, et cetera, and graduate without student debt."
Okay.
Well, she really wanted to go to the other school, but she understood what her parents said, and she went to the second school, graduated without debt. So I think it's about making intelligent choices in
definitely.
where you go. But if you're in a situation where you are having difficulty with paying the student loans, I think that people think there isn't a solution. They're just stuck. There's nothing that can be done. They're of the firm belief, well, you can't discharge it in bankruptcy. I'm just going to be saddled with this for the rest of my life, and they don't seek out help. Now, with federal loans, since the Obama administration, there's been a lot more education of people, so to speak, of options out there with federal loans, repayment plans that track with your income, certain administrative discharges if you become disabled, things like that. That if people seek this help, more and more people are able to get back on track with federal loans. But even with private loans and some state loans, for example, New Jersey has something called a class loan through their New Jersey's Higher Education Student Assistance Authority, and these loans can amount to tens of thousands of dollars, be very difficult to pay. And I've helped a lot of people to get an affordable payment, but people don't think there is a solution, so they don't Google for it, and they don't find me. So one of my greatest difficulties and frustrations is getting the word out. Folks, talk to a professional, talk to someone that knows student loan law, that knows this area of the law, that can negotiate and help you get into an affordable plan to get things back on track. Just make your life better.
So, quick question. So, if you file for bankruptcy, your student loans aren't automatically wiped out?
That's correct. You need to, right now, there is a very high burden that is put on debtors in bankruptcy to discharge student loan debt. They have to show, first of all, that it has an undue financial hardship, which basically you're just about starving to death, living in a one-room garret apartment and living on food stamps, sort of thing. Second, you need to prove that this is a persistent state of affairs. In other words, this isn't, you're just not down in your luck right now and things will get better. This is your life for the foreseeable future. And the third thing you have to prove is that you made a good faith attempt to repay the debt. Now, this test that came out originally back in the 1980s, when you could actually discharge a student loan debt after it was more than 5 years old.
Okay.
So that non-dischargeability was just for that 5 years. So that's why you had this persistent state of affairs and things like that, so that you and at least try to pay it. But now it's no matter what, there is no 5 years. It went to 7 years, and then it was forever. And you still have this very onerous test that you have to pass.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, and I don't know how it works in Australia. I'm pretty sure the thing with our loans over here, I think student loans, is what you let accumulate, but then you only pay back a percentage of whatever your income is that particular year.
Right.
So as you're getting paid by your employer, you will say that you have, they call it a HEX debt over here, and a percentage gets added onto your tax, and it just gets paid off over a period of time until it's all done. And I'm not sure whether it can be written off if you go bankrupt or not. I have no idea. I've never needed to worry about it.
Well, with these income-driven plans with the federal government, you can, if you really don't, have a lower income, your monthly payment can be capped at anywhere from 10 to 15% of your disposable income, and every 12 months they reevaluate your income situation and ability to pay, and that can continue on for as much as 20 to 25 years of making at least payments you can afford. And if you get to the end of that and there's still money left over, then it gets wiped out.
Okay.
You don't have to pay the balance.
Before we wrap up, there's an intriguing question going around in my mind that I need to ask. Okay, where were you originally from?
Originally from Haddonfield, New Jersey, which is one county north of where I am. I've been a New Jersey boy all my life.
Okay.
I went to college in Pennsylvania.
That's what I was going to say, but you went to college in Pennsylvania, Penn State?
No, I actually went to a private college, Dickinson College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is just outside the state capital of Harrisburg.
Okay, is that where Dave went? Dave Fries?
Yes, that's where I met Dave and his wife.
Okay,
and we know each other from college.
That's right. Yeah, Dave did mention you all went to college together.
I went to university. I went to undergraduate. I got my bachelor's degree at Dickinson. I actually went to Rutgers University Law School at their Camden campus. So I came back to New Jersey for law school.
Ah, right. Okay. That's what I just wanted to. So can some people you'll watch a TV show and they go, oh, they got into Harvard University,
yes,
Harvard Law, and because they never say Harvard University, it's always got into Harvard Law, and so they might be from California. So what happens then? Can they then practice anywhere else? They've got to then pass the bar exam in whatever state it is they eventually want to work in.
Well, no matter where you go to law school, you ultimately have to pass the bar exam for where you want to practice law.
Okay.
So law schools, for the most part, teach law on the federal model. So if you're learning like court rules on what you do when you go to court and whether it's a civil or criminal proceeding, you learn the federal rules of civil procedure.
Okay.
And you might take other elective courses, but
so it's like
yes, you ultimately have to take, yes. And really Uh, and I don't know whether it makes a difference or not, but you can practice law anywhere, whether it's in the state where you went to law school or not, as long as you can pass that state's bar exam.
Okay. Yeah, my brother's a dentist, and he went and got a law degree.
Mm.
And when he got his law degree, so he was thinking at one stage of jumping ship from dentistry and becoming a lawyer, but specializing like in dental law, with health
Okay.
insurance and all that. So after he got his law degree, I said, "Oh, so is that what you're going to do?" He went, "No." He said, because he said, but and how he described it to me, he said, a law degree. He said, I feel like I'm a glorified librarian. He said, all my law degree has taught me has taught me where to look to find the law. But then there's so much more research you need to do to then understand the law. He said, so for me to graduate with my law degree, he said, now I have to get a job in a law firm and work there for a certain number of years to understand, I think they call it the articles or something like that, to understand that before you can then become like a real lawyer, or a solicitor, they call that over here.
Yeah, well, the law schools teach you the law. They don't teach you how to practice law.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem, really, that you don't learn that practically. I mean, even in the medical profession.
Oh, it's the same.
You go through you learn medicine, but then you go through more of formal training of rotations in a hospital in different areas of medicine and things like that, and learning not only the medicine itself, but how to practice it. I think medical education has something on a legal education as far as practicality.
Before we wrap up, Steve, I've got one final question for you. Somebody's walking down the road, so they bump into you and they go, Steve, like we said before, bit of financial stress. What's the number one tip you would give me as I head into work on Monday morning? So they own their own business.
If you're under financial stress, you need to know your numbers. Okay, I tell people, sit down and find out what it costs you to live. People, a lot of people just don't have a good idea of where their money goes. You should know where every dollar of your paycheck goes, what you spend on what, and it can be a very eye-opening experience. I go through this exercise all the time with my bankruptcy clients, and a lot of them are just amazed at how much they're spending on one thing or another.
Yeah.
And once you know what you're spending, you know where you can make cuts to free up some money to help get you out of debt. But until you get a handle on your finances, until you know that you have cut your spending down as far as you can, and you have increased your income as far as you can, that's really the first step to getting a handle on things and moving towards financial freedom. You may ultimately have to file bankruptcy. If that's the case, I call it hitting the financial reset button.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the title of my book on bankruptcy.
But I might make that the title of this episode too. Hitting the financial reset button. I'm going to write that down.
And you can get a copy of that book if you go to NewJerseyBankruptcyBook.com.
Okay. So, Steve, I want to thank you for coming on It's No Secret with Dr. T. If people want to reach out and grab you, get hold of you at all, just go to your website.
Yeah, you can go to RichardsonLawOffices.com. As I said, for the podcast, it's podcast.RichardsonLawOffices.com. My email address is steve@RichardsonLawOffices.com. Feel free to reach out.
No, that is fantastic. So, Steve, thank you for coming on It's No Secret with Dr. T. I'm sure everyone that's listened to this has got something out of it, and if not, as I usually say, they should give themselves an uppercut. So, give themselves give them a northern New Jersey uppercut. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That's episode 197 in the bag with Steve Richardson. And I hope you enjoyed and got a little bit out of this today, because I think it's really important to understand everybody goes through some form of financial stress at one point or another in their life. Some go through it more than once, but I think as long as you learn something from it each time you go through it. The important part that I picked up from Steve, though, when you're in financial stress, make sure you just get advice from people who are qualified to be giving you answers or giving you the information that you need. Don't ask friends and family who are not qualified in that particular area. And I think that applies to everything in life. So pretty much that's it for me this week. I hope you've enjoyed. This is officially the first, I class it the real podcast for 2020. Episode 195 and 196 were rebroadcasts from episode 2 and episode 3. 195 was Dave Freeze and 196 was Wilson Lawrence, and they're both really, really good episodes. So if you listen to them the first time, that's great. If you missed them the first time and you didn't listen to them the last 2 weeks, go back and have a listen to them. Dave Freeze spoke about communication, persuasion and influence, and Wilson Lawrence spoke about the morning routine. They're two really, really good episodes, and the reason I replayed them was because they were so popular. And I think this episode as well, I think just understanding about financial stress, and if things are really bad, bankruptcy doesn't necessarily mean you failed. Sometimes it's just a financial reset. So that's it for me this week. Look after yourself, look after your family, and I will talk to you again next week. Bye for now.